It is Thursday, March 14th, 2015. Welcome to the Alien Invasion number 144, a production of GalacticNetcasts.com. I'm Dave Nelson, and right over there, across from me, or to the side of me, is Brad Ludwig. Hey, Brad.
Hey, how are you?
Not too shabby at all. Now, last week, we were talking about, well, it kind of came up last week. You brought up the idea last week about the Galactic Netcast drinking game, right?
Heck yeah.
That was in the middle of the show. And how did that start? Oh, I said something to you, and then you were like, hey, we should do a Galactic Netcast drinking game.
Yeah, it was really kind of an off-the-cuff. It seemed like the situation was like, boy, we hear that a lot. Boy, that should be a drinking game, and if you're playing at home, take a drink. Something of that nature. So, yeah.
And then during the show, you posted in the Galactic Netcast Facebook group with the basic rules. And then what happened after that?
Well, after that, we had a long conversation with other members of the Galactic Core, and they contributed and added some things. Daryl Johnston did kind of gave us a huge list of items that centered on Matt, because Matt's a good guy, and Matt's on the Syfy Geeks Club.
He's also on Weird World Weekly with me.
And yes, how could I forget Weird World Weekly? Weird World Weekly. Woof.
I like to call it WWW or Triple W.
Triple dubs, yo.
So do you want to just run down the rules real quick?
Yes, we started with the basic rules that different situations where you would take a drink. The first one was Dave stumbles over a word. Brad says that was our prom theme. Anessa says that's what she says. That's what she said.
And for those of you who are fairly new to the Alien Invasion or any of our other podcasts, Anessa is a co-host. She is just on hiatus right now.
Yes. And then it exploded from there. We added updates to the list of rules, which besides the first three I ticked off there, we've got Brad does the old man voice and says, back in my day. Matt mentions Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Of course.
Matt says, bye, Dad. Matt makes the noise at the mention of Doctor Who, because he is
I forgot. I don't think we should limit that to Doctor Who, because he's kind of a curmudgeon in a lot of like mainstream science fiction stuff, sci-fi.
Yeah, I think maybe we should just trim that down to Matt makes the noise.
Yeah.
Matt claims he never understood a word of whatever, which is something that he says. We'll talk about something, and he gives a great non-geek perspective on things that we talk about in the Syfy Geeks Club. And sometimes we'll go full geek mode and everybody's chiming in with their geek stuff and Matt's got nothing. And then he'll toss that gem out.
And, for the people that are just listeners or just watchers of the Alien Invasion, if you want to know who these people are, then please do us a favor or do yourself a favor or whatever. Go back and listen to episodes of the Syfy Geeks Club, of Weird World Weekly, of our Galactic Net Bites, because some of the people that are going to be in the rules here are hosts of those smaller podcasts that we also have on the network. So,
correct.
Continue, my friend.
Then we have JF DeBow claims he's talking too much.
Yeah, happens pretty much once an episode. Yep.
Glenn Bittner bursts into a poorly done accent, and Glenn Bittner is my co-host on the Adventure Party podcast. The next up is Gregor Spragg makes you feel old when he mentions growing up in the 90s. And Ryan Murphy says something very Canadian, and Ryan Murphy provides us with the Galactic Net Bite called Galactic Gaming News.
We need to really get him on the Syfy Geeks Club again.
Yeah, we do.
He was on early in one of the early episodes.
Yes, he was. and a delightful man. I really is very, very polite and has a lot of good stuff to say about sci-fi. So yes, we should totally have him back.
Is that it? Anymore?
That is it at this point. I'm going to take a look at, yeah, we still need a contributor and longtime fan, Daryl Johnston, who provides us with Who Knew, which is Doctor Who News, another Galactic Net Bite. We don't have something for him yet.
Or Amy Frost.
Or Amy Frost, yes.
Yeah. I think the best way to, if you really want this game to be effective, I think you should sit down, you and your Galactic Netcast friends, and listen to an episode of each podcast back to back in order to get the full effect.
And to get rip-roaringly drunk.
Yeah. So if you want to take part in the conversation to get these rules made up, then join our Facebook group. Just search for Galactic Netcast and join the group, not the page. You can join the page too, but the group is where we're doing this brainstorming on this game. And of course, thanks to everybody who contributed. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. Heck yeah. It was a very lively conversation, and not that we're necessarily promoting drunkenness, but it's always one of those things where we go, boy, I think we say that a lot. We're not sure. And I'll go back and I'll listen and I'll go, yeah, we do. Yeah.
All right, good stuff. Let's get into the meat and bones of this podcast. This is the show where we talk about extraterrestrials and their appearances in science fiction, real life, the video games, comic books. Let's see, TV and film, wherever they may be, we talk about them. And the show, of course, is in 3 sections: the news, the sightings feature, and our picks for the week. If you ever want to watch us do the show live, you can do so by going to Galactic Netcasts and clicking on the live tab. And I think it's under a different tab, actually. Right?
What?
Maybe it's got its own tab. I forget. But it's on the website.
Well, it's a tab called Watch.
Okay, yeah, Watch and then Live. Okay.
Correct.
Or just go to youtube.com/Galactic Netcasts. And then, of course, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. We'll let you know when we are going live. And that's how that works. So let's start with the news. And guess what? The soundboard is back. So here we go.
Yes.
In the news.
And I saw this story all week, Brad. Kept on popping up on my Facebook page. I follow, there's an aliens Facebook group that I'm a member of. And this story kept on popping up in that group. So I thought I'd bring it to our podcast so we can talk about it. Russians orders U.S. tell the world about aliens or we will.
Dun, dun, dun.
I need to re-add that to the soundboard. So far, I only got the basics. I have just the intros. I need to add all the other small stuff. So a stunning Ministry of Foreign Affairs report on Prime Minister Medvedev's. I was practicing this. Medvedev's. That's not how you'd say it.
That's what I would say. Medvedev's.
Medvedev's agenda at the World Economic Forum this week states that Russia will warn U.S. that the time has come for the world to know the truth about aliens. And if the U.S. won't participate in the announcement, the Kremlin will do so on its own. So this comes from Prime Minister Medvedev. Medvedev's agenda at the World Economic Forum. So I don't know how far they're into it or if it's done already, if it's already over. I don't know the latest on the World Economic Forum, but that happened this week. So after completing a December 2012 on-camera interview with reporters in Moscow, this is completely separate from this first part, but Medvedev did this interview back in 2012, and after the interview was officially done, apparently the reporters had cameras rolling, and they asked him some kind of off the record questions, and they actually captured it to respond to reporters, and he made some off air comments without realizing that his microphone was still on. He was then asked by one reporter if the president is handed secret files on aliens when he receives the briefcase needed to activate Russia's nuclear arsenal. Medvedev responded by saying, along with the briefcase with nuclear codes, the president of the country is given a special top secret folder. This folder, in its entirety, contains information about aliens who visited our planet. Along with this, you are given a report of the absolutely secret special service that exercises control over aliens on the territory of our country. More detailed information on this topic you can get from the well-known movie called Men in Black. And wait a second, it's not the movie that you think it is. Apparently, that is a Russian documentary called Men in Black.
Okay.
Not the Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones.
Thinking what
very successful series of movies.
Like Barry Sonnenfeld, like hit the nail on the head with his film. What's going on?
He had some inside information somehow. For the
Must have, yes.
Russian information. So that's what I said. If anyone is losing their minds about aliens, it must be pointed out if it is certainly not Russia, but the Vatican, which in November 2009 announced it was preparing for extraterrestrial disclosure. Now, with all that said, I'm sure that these quotes were taken out of context, because you can grab a quote and like maybe they're talking about aliens from another country, or maybe the Vatican is talking about extraterrestrial life that they find on like one of Jupiter's moons or something like that.
Probably, looking at, and I found the World Economic Forum website, which is weforum.org. And their next conference is the World Economic Forum on the Middle East and North Africa, which is from the, 21st to the 23rd of May. It is right now the 14th of May.
Okay, so it's coming up next week.
Well, they just had a World Economic Forum on Latin America, which took place in Riviera Maya, Mexico, and that took place from the 6th to the 8th of May. So that was just last week.
And maybe that's the one they're talking about then.
Perhaps.
Yeah, most likely. Okay. But what do you think about this, Brad? Do you think he was do you think this is something that was taken out of context?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the president is given a briefcase. If they're going to say that aliens are on the planet, they exist all over the planet and have different sections, because it says quite specifically that you are given a report of the absolutely secret special service that exercises control over aliens on the territory of our country. So that means that there are different territories on different countries. What that has to be a fairly sizable list.
Mm-hmm.
If you're being handed a briefcase with nuclear codes, I doubt that you're going to litter it up with additional stuff not pertinent to nuclear codes. That doesn't make sense to me. So I think this is completely taken out of context and embellished.
The only part of this that I have doubts as to if it was taken out of context is the original quote, the time has come for the U.S. to step up and reveal the truth about aliens, or we will. That, I don't know how you could take something like that out of something else they're talking about and make it sound like real alien.
Was it President Reagan who was joking and didn't realize his mic was on, and he said, yep, we launched the nukes in 5 minutes or something like that?
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't hear about that.
Oh,
wow.
Yes. And
Okay.
everybody stopped for just a moment in this press conference and went, "What?" Yes, it's something you can actually find the video on YouTube.
That's
And
something that you don't joking around about.
no, not really.
Oh.
Especially when you're at a large. It was a conference where I don't know. Well, I can't remember specifically what it was, but there were plenty of press there, and that was really kind of a poor decision to make. So, but he made it. He is human. So,
Okay. Well, if they're talking about the conference that happened this week, then I haven't heard a follow up to the story, so maybe it didn't happen. If they're talking about the one that's coming up in a week and a half, then I guess we'll see. I guess we'll find out.
we will. We most certainly will.
Okay, let's move on to the second story in the news, and that is yours, Brad.
It is, and it's a follow up to a story that we had last week where the mummified alien body was found. There was a slide photograph that was taken of a mummified slash desiccated alien body. It was a small humanoid in shape and it had a large head, and it was supposedly from the 1947 Roswell crash. And
And
we
they
had
teased
a
this. They teased it for a long, long time. Like we're going to announce it. We're going to unveil these slides, and the whole world's going to be shocked. This is definitive proof that aliens exist.
yes. Surprise. Let's do the story here, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, this is actually from Discovery.com's news site, so it's a reputable source. It's not coming from some fly by night Weekly World News site. So here we go. Earlier this month at a UFO conference in Mexico City, two photographs claimed to have been found in a trunk in Sedona and depicted the alien body that crashed in Roswell 1947 were revealed. The images, which have created a buzz among UFO believers, depict a small human-shaped figure with an enlarged head, apparently in a display case with an unreadable placard, oddly enough. Low-resolution images have been circulating for some time, and several skeptical researchers identified the Roswell alien as a mummified child. However, those promoting the photos as authentic, such as Jamie Mawson, the Mexican UFO expert who orchestrated the conference, insisted that it could not be a mummy. A Reuters news story featured video of UFO proponent Richard Dolan at the conference claiming, without providing any documentation, that experts had ruled out the mummy explanation. He was quoted as saying, "Analysis of the body suggested that this is not a mummy and not a human, not a mammal, and not a model." Finally, the truth was revealed when a slide of the image was examined by a member of the Roswell Slides research team, used a newly acquired source image of the placard seen in front of the body. By manipulating the commercial software Smart Deblur, he managed to significantly clear up the blurred text. The sign in front of the Roswell alien reads, "Mummified body of 2-year-old boy."
Oh my God! Wow, that's a little bit embarrassing.
Well, and I even mentioned something about that, I think, in that last episode. I'm like, what the heck does that sign say, and why are they blurring it out? So it is followed by a mostly legible short description of the piece and concludes, as many museum signs do, with an acknowledgement stating that this was loaned by a man in San Francisco. An identical photo was found later with the complete information, "Mummified body of 2-year-old boy. At the time of the burial, the body was clothed in a slip-over cotton shirt. Burial wrappings consisted of 3 small cotton blankets, loaned by Mrs. S.L. Palmer, San Francisco, California." So,
I have a couple of questions about this.
okay.
Okay, was this slide actually? Was it a slide from a picture taken in 1947 of a mummified boy?
You know, that let me go. I trimmed out a bunch from this story because this was actually kind of a long breakdown, and it said a lot of stuff.
Okay. I'm just curious because if it's not, is this a picture that they knew? Okay. Did they know what it was going into this? And possibly, if that's the case, is it something that they found from a picture that was taken, like a newer picture, not from that era, and did they blur it out? Did they blur out the sign themselves? I have many questions, Brad.
Yeah, and a lot of those questions were asked. Let's see. Well, we'll go into this quote here. Referring to the bogus photos as inevitable bumps in the road, Dolan acknowledged in a Facebook post that I am aware that there are those who are disappointed with me over my connection to the recent events in Mexico City. Some are even angry. Critics may think what they want. I am satisfied with my actions, and that is all that matters to me. That's kind of in response to people saying, okay, you're a charlatan and you signed off on this, and what's going on here?
Okay. All right, I guess that answers that. I mean, it's obviously it's a fake. So those lying liarsons, those lying liarsons, liar pants on fire.
Yeah, it does not say here that the slides are that old. It doesn't mention that in the story. You can go to the show notes and get the link to read the full story. I dropped about half of it, but it was really the important half. All the rest of it was, shame on them for doing that, and here's specifics, and
editorial garbage.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, this was a. It reads a little bit like a blog post / news story. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Brad.
You are welcome.
Let's wrap things up in the news department with a couple of Hollywood stories. I wish I had Hollywood music. That hooray for Hollywood. Okay.
You didn't realize that this was a show about aliens and show tunes. Surprise!
Yeah. Okay, so I usually come up with a couple of entertainment stories related to aliens, and this week was pretty good because we got the announcement that the X-Files has an official premiere date. The recently revived X-Files. No, you're not listening to this in 1993. 2015. We're talking about the series event is what they're calling it. The 6-episode series will premiere on Sunday, January 24th, and that is the night of the NFC Championship game. So once the game wraps up, we'll roll right into the X-Files. Get plenty of chances to promote the episode during the game. Hey, coming up next, it's the return of the X-Files. And then it's going to, the next night is going to be their regular time slot. So it'll premiere on that Sunday. That will be episode 1. And then episode 2 will be the next night on January 25th. And then every Monday after that for six episodes. So nice. There you go. Very excited about this. Also that night will be the Minority Report. The TV version of the Minority Report will also be on Monday. So that's going to be a nice Gotham will be, let's see. So Gotham returns in the fall. So I believe that what this episode makes it sound like is Gotham's going to be on hiatus during the period that the X-Files will be on that Monday night.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. So X-Files will occupy Gotham's time slot during that hiatus. There's going to be so much good TV on this year. I don't know when I will have the time to watch all this good TV that's going to be on this year. I'm serious. Like between the CW and all their crazy, awesome superhero shows, and then everything else that's geektastic, it's just the the ABC with the Marvel stuff. Agent Carter's back for a second season. Agents of Shield. Are you caught up? By the way, are you guys caught up?
Yes, we did see the Agents of Shield. Yes, and wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. It's like it ended. It's like what? Okay, what?
Yes.
And then the CW's the Flash and Arrow were amazing as well. Well, we got one more episode of the Flash left, but
yes.
Okay, so that's story number 1. Story number 2 is Childhood's End. Exclusive trailer from Entertainment Weekly was released today, and it looks awesome. It also looks very, very cool. And that will be a 3-night miniseries on Syfy in December. And if you're not listening in the States, then you'll have to find it wherever you are, whatever channel it is where you live, where you'll have to do some digging. I'm sorry, I can't do research for everybody in the world. So,
well,
there you go.
You could, but
I could. I'm not going to, though. So, are you excited for both these, Brad?
I'm cautiously optimistic about the X-Files.
Mm-hmm.
I really sort of clocked out at about season 5 or 6. Yeah, I think it was about 5 or 6.
I think a lot of people did in that. How many seasons did they have?
I want to say 9. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's
And
about
that
the time I started clocking out. You're right.
Yeah.
Not
But Childhood's End, though, I am very interested in. I do want to see how they make that work.
That's Arthur C. Clarke, right?
Yes, it is. And it'll be very interesting to see how. I keep thinking back to there was a TV event for another Arthur C. Clarke book, and it was The Martian Chronicles.
Yeah, I remember The Martian Chronicles, yeah.
And that was like mid to late 80s, if I recall. And I was not very impressed.
Well, okay, it was the mid to late 80s. That's probably why you...
Exactly. So a part of me goes, Arthur C. Clarke on television. And I go, oh, Arthur C. Clarke on television. I remember that. So, I mean, a lot of time has passed. And it'll be very cool to see, to compare, at least mentally, what the difference between these two properties and how it's treated. So,
and also production companies, networks, film studios have really stepped up production value. So it's not like back in my day. Come on,
back in my day.
Take a drink.
So
yeah, I think it's going to be good. I'm excited for both. I wanted to say that Cole Meany is in this Childhood's End. Of course,
it's always good to see him.
Yeah, he's great. He's in a lot of stuff, of course. Best known to us as playing Chief O'Brien from the Star Trek fan.
Yes. Yeah.
And then X-Files, I wanted to say that I think it's going to be better since it's only 6 episodes. I think they're going to make this like into 2 or 3 movies almost.
And I think really that's the only thing that I worry about is they've got all that potential baggage of, seasons, all the seasons that and this is personal opinion. They've got all the baggage from the seasons that I didn't enjoy. And it will be interesting to see how they craft a compelling story that will get those people that clocked out back. And, do they not bring back Doggett? Do they mention Doggett? Is Doggett a part of the story? And Doggett was basically the Mulder, or I'm sorry, the Scully after Scully basically, the Mulder disappears and Scully ends up becoming Mulder in her attitudes, there's aliens and you got to check this out, where she had been the skeptic all along. And now you had that dynamics flip with this new guy, Doggett, and Scully was the believer and Doggett was the skeptic. So it'll be interesting to see how that new dynamic would play out and how that's all going to work.
And where are these characters at? You know, are they all still working? FBI is like one of them a consultant. Skinner's, where's he at? He's got to be high up in the ranks, right? Because he was assistant director for all that time. So a lot of questions need to be, and I can't wait until we get our first trailer for that. Probably around early fall, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on and do our next dealie here. Here we go.
Please identify the craft you witnessed.
A black, triangular, three-dimensional shape, huge, just flying, hovering minutes.
Shaped like almost like between an egg and like a teardrop.
Two long cylinder objects flying over me.
We had a zone. I could see the occupants in it.
It appeared to be rotating, and it was circular to disc shape, and it hovered for maybe about 5 minutes.
Time for Sightings. What used to be the Craft Corner, and before that, what used to be the Creature Feature. Now we call it Sightings. And I believe Brad dug up something good.
Well, I hope so. For those of you who saw the movie 2001, it's a Stanley Kubrick film, and it is riddled with imagery and riddled with things are not spoon-fed to you in this film necessarily. So after watching that, and I might recommend watching it in an altered state of consciousness, perhaps, because there's a lot of stuff that, you know, when you're completely full and well and sober, you have a lot of questions, and being a little wrecked might actually help smooth some of the rough patches out for you. Anyways, they did a follow-up film. They did a follow-up film many years later in the mid-'80s, and that movie was 2010. Now, there are a series of books called the Space Odyssey series, which started with 2001, and oh, good Lord, I think there's at least 4 or 5. Yeah, because it goes 2001, 2010, 2061, and 3001.
You know what's funny, Brad, is my wife and I were in the bookstore where she works part-time looking at all those books 2 nights ago. It's kind of funny that you bring up all those.
So yes, there were 4 books in the series. Now, they only made movies of 2001 and 2010. And 2010 was actually, it was done in 1984. So there we go. It was early to mid-'80s. It's a lot less heady. It's a lot more straightforward. And you had some great actors in it. Roy Scheider. Roy. Yes, I always wanted to say Roy. Who's the comedian Snyder? Rob Snyder. My brain wants to juxtapose the two, and that doesn't work in this case. Also, you had. Oh shoot! Now I'm embarrassed because it was a great actor.
I wish I could look this up on my computer, but anytime that I look up things while we're doing the hangout, my computer totally hangs up. So I'm no help whatsoever.
That's okay. Thanks to the power of the internets, I can find it out. Hey, thanks, internets. John Lithgow.
Yes, exactly.
Helen Mirren. Dana Eclair.
Helen Mirren was in that movie?
Or Dana Elcar. Yes. She was.
Was she the Russian?
She was one of the Russians. Yes.
Okay.
She was one of the female Russian crew members.
Was she the one that jumped Roy Scheider in his little sleep tube?
It's been a while since I've seen the film. And this isn't really entirely about the film. This is about the film and the books. So we're going to talk about the Russian spacecraft, because at the end of 2001, the Discovery spacecraft is left cut adrift. Everybody that was on that crewed that ship is gone, dead, or has just disappeared. Frank Poole disappears at the end. We as the viewer know what happened, but the general public on Earth does not. And in 2010, it sort of picks up with them trying to put together a mission and figuring out what happened 9 years after the fact. And to get there, they actually have to team up with the Russians, and they have to take a spacecraft called the Cosmonaut Alexei Leonov.
And this was a very tense time for both countries, right? This is in the middle of the Cold War. It's the Cold War at its coldest or its warmest. One of the, I don't know.
Yeah, in the book, things are a little dicey between the two countries still. So there's still that Cold War mentality, even though we, as a people, know by 2010, there is no Soviet Russia. So they have a new form of propulsion, so it takes even less time to make the trek. And this craft moves incredibly quickly. It has what was dubbed the Sakharov drive, and it moved at least twice as fast as the old craft, as the Discovery. The craft uses a large heat shield to aerobrake in Jupiter's outer atmosphere, saving fuel. So it rockets super fast, and then they don't have to waste any fuel to reverse thrust to slow down and stop. They actually use that heat shield at the front to basically ram into the outer edge of the atmosphere and slow down. And it was named after a cosmonaut called Alexei Leonov. I'm sure that was... People were wondering, how did that ship get the name Cosmonaut Alexei Leonov? Well, there was actually a cosmonaut named Alexei Leonov. So there you go. The Russians are said to view gravity as more or less a luxury, and the Leonov does not have artificial gravity. The Discovery did. It had a rotating section to the craft, and it allowed the crew members to jog and sleep in that gravity controlled area.
That's typical. That's a typical Russian thing to do. You know, let's sacrifice a luxury to give us more power or to make our ship better. You know, we don't need this or that. We're Russians. We're stronger than that. We don't need to be cushioned.
Yes. Now in the film, the Leonov had a rotating midsection, which provided artificial gravity, but in the book, it did not.
Okay.
And it had something a little bit different than a heat shield, but it performed the same function. It got the ship to brake in the outer atmosphere. So it is it also, the Leonov, oddly enough, the model from the movie, was the inspiration for the Omega class destroyers seen in the TV series Babylon 5. Nice. Now, the Omega class destroyer was they were the huge ships that could create their own jump gates that the Earth Alliance had. So you would see these huge, I keep thinking of like the anime Captain Harlock, or any anime that has like a huge, it almost looks like an aircraft carrier or a battleship, but modified so that it could fly in space. It's kind of like that. And that was but the thing about the Omega class destroyer is and just like I was saying, the Leonov, think of if you had a pencil sitting in front of you, the center rotating. Hang on 1
second. Hang on. I got a pen. I don't have a pencil, but I got a pen. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Any writing utensil, something that is long and thin, And then in the center of that, imagine if you had, say, 4, like those pink erasers you had as kids in school. Okay. 2 on either side of the pen or pencil, stacked on top of each other. And then and they would be stacked in a fashion so that the fatter side, the wider, would be laying against the pencil. And then those 4 items, 2 on either side, would rotate completely opposite of each other. And the artificial gravity was created by that rotating intersection.
So the main part of the ship that is used to travel through space doesn't necessarily need gravity, but when they get to wherever they're going, or they can stop or whatever, and they need gravity to kind of, I don't know, because human bodies need gravity to survive, right? So you turn that on.
You don't need it to survive necessarily. It does cause, certain circulation functions in the body. I mean, the human body is designed for gravity. And over time, the body makes weird adjustments to zero gravity that aren't necessarily healthy for it in the long run. So that's part of the reason why they had artificial gravity for that. So there you go. The ship this week, or the sighting for this week, is the craft from 2010, the cosmonaut Alexei Leonov.
Okay. And there are just to clarify for you nitpickers out there.
Yes,
there are aliens in the movie. Well, we don't actually see the aliens, but they have a presence.
Yeah, it's an outside presence that is there to kind of jumpstart the evolution of man, to move it along on a course that pushes it towards the future.
That's what's great about the Space Odyssey, or the 2001 and 2010, is the aliens are there, but you never see them. It's like their presence is known. Like, you feel their presence, but you never see them, right?
Yeah. At the end of 2010, a message is sent to Earth from one of the moons that was converted. I believe it was, I can't remember if it was Europa or Titan. You can always send us a note at an email at galacticnetcasts@gmail.com and let us know. But there was a message that's sent to Earth that says, all of this is yours to explore except for, and I can't remember which moon it was of Jupiter. But that outer, Europa. Yeah, and that outer intelligence is very active, very, very alien to us, and is safeguarding basically a new species of being. So,
and I think it's Europa, because that's where the monolith. That's where they find the monolith, is on Europa, or I don't know. There's something. Europa's involved in the movie somehow.
Yeah, well, there's. Oh my God, there's liquid water under Europa, so they're checking things out, and yeah, I might be starting to mix my movies now, because I remember there's a movie they go to Europa and there's something underneath, and then they leave. No, it predates Europa Report.
Okay. I think we have a new rule for the Galactic Netcast drinking game. Whenever Brad forgets something, you take a drink.
Oh, Lord. Not going to be a sober person ever listening to the podcast. Ever.
All right. So, like Brad said, if you know anything more than we do, at the point where we're at, I mean, sure, we could look things up, but it's really hard for us to do a podcast and look things up at the same time. So we would love feedback, galacticnetcasts@gmail.com. You can also call our voicemail number, 805-328-3966, or go to the website, galacticnetcast.com, and click on that thing on the very right side of the screen, and place your order right there. Leave your voice message on the web through the website as well. So let us know what we got wrong about talking about 2010. We would love to be corrected.
Yes, Europa was definitely a part of it, and they sent a probe to Europa to check out some energy readings, and yeah, things kind of go off the rails from there.
All right, let's move on to the pick section. These are things that we have watched, listened to, read, played, eaten, went to, anything that is touched by an alien presence. That's what our picks are. And
I was
both
hoping you weren't going to say rubbed on our genitals because
this is that. Zuza.
oh,
Huh.
did I take it too far there? Yeah, sorry about that.
All right. So both of our picks this week are very similar to each other. Did you notice that, Brad?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, mine is, both of them are anthology TV series.
Yes, they are.
Mine is super old, and it could be called like the inspiration for everyone that came after it. It's like 1950 or 51. It's called Tales of Tomorrow, and I believe it began as a radio show. But the episode that I watched, which you can find almost all of them on YouTube, which is where I found mine, is called The Search for the Flying Saucer. And here's a brief synopsis of the episode from IMDb. Army pilot Vic Russo, grounded after reporting an encounter with a UFO, is determined to prove flying saucers exist. He travels to a remote New Mexico town to investigate reports of alien craft, but the locals clam up when he brings up the subject, all except Crazy John, an old coot, who offers to lead Vic to their landing site.
Sure, I saw it. I'll take you right to it.
It's pretty much how he sounded like. You're not too far off, Brad.
Take a drink.
I loved watching this on YouTube because they included the commercials. Because this is the dawn of TV. So yeah. The shows that they had on were very much like, I made this comparison to my wife. We were watching it together. I said, it's very much like radio, and it's very much like stage play, because they had a single camera, and you almost could see that these could have been like sets from a stage. Just the way the lighting is and the way the camera kind of followed them around, tight shots. And they also had commercials it was like in 3 sections. It was like a play in that way too. It had 3 acts. So they had a commercial between each act. And it was really, it was such a throwback to before TV really came to its own and what it is today, the format that we follow in TV today, which is, the 60-minute show divided into a certain amount, of part of the program, commercial break, part of the program, commercial. This is very much in the early stages of TV. So it was very different. And the commercials they had was like one single commercial. So like the show was brought to you by, I forget what the sponsor was, but it's something that's not around anymore. No, it was like Chrysler watches, and it's not Chrysler like the Chrysler the car. It's with a K. That was the sponsor of it. And they had a jingle. It was awesome. And the other thing that I thought was compared to radio dramas was they had a church organ as the music. So I thought that was kind of cool as well. The story's pretty good, very much overacting like they would do back then, and a really interesting twist at the end. Very much like, I want to compare it to like The Outer Limits, which is your pick, or The Twilight Zone. Very much like, like I didn't see that coming. That's crazy. So I recommend Tales of Tomorrow, The Search for the Flying Saucer. That's my pick here on the Alien Invasion. Your turn, Brad.
It is my turn. Well, sticking with the theme, I went with the Outer Limits episode called The Invaders. And it's a very intriguing episode because it is there is pretty much one actress, and that is Agnes Moorehead. Does that name ring a bell to you?
Yeah, it does. What year did this episode come out, or what year was the show on?
This particular episode aired January 27th, 1961. So like 10 years after Tales of Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Because that aired in 1951.
Yes.
So Agnes Moorehead actually played Tabitha Stevens' mother in Bewitched.
Oh, I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
And the episode has pretty much no dialogue. And the episode, you see an old woman and she lives alone in this rustic cabin and she's dressed kind of in rags. So you're wondering kind of what her story is. And she hears a strange noise above her house. And there are these tiny spacemen that have invaded her home in this very tiny flying saucer that has landed on the roof of her home. And these things are like 6 inches tall, and they look like little robots. They actually, to do this, they actually were like wind up walking toys.
Oh, nice.
And she battles them a number of times, and they have these guns. They kind of shoot out sparks. And then she hears these little beings speak, and they speak in English, but she's not talking. And in this whole thing, she's fighting off these 6-inch little aliens that speak English, and you come to realize at the end something very strange, and I don't want to give anything away. I'm not going to give away the ending because it really kind of makes you go, huh, okay. That's very interesting. That's a very interesting spin on that. So.
Okay. All right. I love these kind of anthology series. The way there's the whole twist at the end. It's always surprises you.
Yeah, I've been watching a bit of the Twilight Zone. And I'm sorry, this was not I'm sorry. The Invaders is an episode of the Twilight Zone, not Outer Limits. I totally mistyped that. It's a Twilight Zone episode.
Cool. That's cool.
But I'm sure people are listening going, well, of course that was a Twilight Zone. What's wrong with you? I was watching I started over. I mentioned earlier that I was starting over at first season, and I usually eat my lunch at my desk, and I have an hour-long lunch, so I will watch an episode or two of something. And I've lately been going with Twilight Zone, and there was an episode, and I can't remember the name of it, but I digress. Sorry.
It's okay.
We'll rein that back in, but there's a lot of wonderful, not just spooky stories, but a lot of stuff that deals with aliens and sci-fi, which really makes The Outer Limits such a wonderful show for folks like us who enjoy talking about aliens and sci-fi.
Yeah. All right, there we go. Our picks: The Twilight Zone, The Invaders, and Tales of Tomorrow: The Search for the Flying Saucer. And we'll have the links to our picks in the show notes of the podcast. All right, we got some feedback this week. Yay. We love getting feedback, and you can leave it by going to galacticnetcasts@gmail.com. That's the email address. Actually, there's a contact thing on the website, too, so galacticnetcast.com. Just go there, and you'll get all the contact information. And the first one was through the website. It says, "Hi, guys. I just wanted to say thanks for the positive review and reception you gave my little independent feature, War of the Worlds, Goliath, on your recent podcast."
Nice.
So the person that made the podcast or made the movie actually was listening to the podcast, and they're like, cool, let me reach out to them. And thank you. It meant a lot that you enjoyed our retro alter history epic and homage to the great H.G. Wells' seminal novel. 300 artists and technicians labored with me for 4 years on this low-budget but ambitious movie, and reviews like you make it all worthwhile. I can't. That movie looked amazing. For if you want to call that low budget, go ahead. But to me, it was high budget. It looked really good. I'm glad you dug the Zeppelin aircraft carrier / dreadnought in particular. And you are correct. It is indeed an homage to the classic Shield helicarrier. In particular, Jack Kirby's fantastic original full-page vision from the Strange Tales 135. When I picked that puppy up on the newsstand back in the day, it was love at first sight. Best, Joe Pearson, and remember, watch the skies.
Nice.
So, Joe, thank you very much for reaching out to us and getting a hold of us. It was awesome to watch the movie, and we really appreciate you piping in. And one more piece of feedback came via our text number, actually our phone number, which you can use as just leaving us a voicemail, or you can call, send us a text message too. It's 805-328-3966, 805-328-3966. Hello. I found you guys through Pat Rothfuss's Twitter the other night and wanted to say your content is fantastic. Do you want to explain Pat Rothfuss and his connection to the Galactic Netcast Network, Brad?
Yes. I do a podcast called Adventure Party, which focuses on gaming, board games, RPGs, and then Ryan Murphy contributes digital game stories that we all put together and put together into the Adventure Party. And Pat Rothfuss was a guest on our last episode, which I'm behind in my editing, and that audio version should be out shortly. But you can watch the video on YouTube, and it was a 2.5 hour long discussion, and pretty much on task with what we were talking about. And the reason why Pat Rothfuss is significant here is he is a New York Times best-selling fantasy author, and our subject on that particular Adventure Party was world building, crafting a world for your characters to exist in while playing an RPG. It was a great discussion, and Pat was very, very generous with tweeting to his followers that he was going to be on that particular episode, and that's how Josh found us.
Yeah, he goes on to say, and thank you everybody for listening and watching that episode. We had quite a few live viewers that night.
Yeah, we did.
So he goes on to say that your content is fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for your hard work. I'm working my way through your podcasts as I type this. It really helps pass the time at work. So thank you. The Sasquatch known as Josh. That's how he described it. That's awesome.
Thank you, Josh, very much.
Again, 805-328-3966. Leave us a text message or use that to leave us a voicemail. You can find the Alien Invasion at galacticnetcast.com or youtube.com/galacticnetcasts. And please, if you subscribe to us on iTunes, leave us 5 stars and a positive review. Also, you can do that on Stitcher as well. We have a subscription page on the website, galacticnetcast.com, where you can find all the different sources as to how you can subscribe to the podcast. We make it very, very easy for you. And thank you, Brad, for joining me as always. Episode 145, is it?
I believe it is. 144.
144 in the books. And as we always do, final thoughts. What do you got, sir?
DC Legends of Tomorrow. Wow. What a great trailer.
Jesus. We're going to talk about that on the Sci-Fi Geeks Club. So if you're not a subscriber yet, please subscribe and enjoy, I'm guessing, our rather lengthy conversation about that trailer, which we're going to record next, and I can't wait.
Yes.
We'll just leave it at that. Leave it at that. All right, that's going to do it for this Alien Invasion, a presentation of galacticnetcast.com. Thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you next time.
Sounds good, Dave.
Bye.
Bye.